Without further ado, a very warm welcome to Women in Neuroscience UK, opportunities in dementia research. I'd like to start by wishing everyone happy International Women's Day. Thank you for joining in, everyone. And if you go onto your phone and type on Mentimeter, the same code that's displayed above, and let us know where you're joining in from, that would be pretty exciting to know. Quite the interesting demographic there. I'm going to let that run in the background while I continue with the rest of the presentation. So what is Women in Neuroscience UK? This network was founded by Lizzie. She's a PhD student at University of Cambridge, who is also a speaker today. And I am Shloka Dhareshwar, an undergrad at Cardiff University and a placement student at the University of Melbourne.
Fantastic. Thank you, Shloka, for the introduction. And hello, everyone. Thank you all so much for coming. It's great to see you all here on International Women's Day. So I'll give you a very brief overview of our schedule first for the evening. So after this introduction, we'll be going to Catherine Hanlon, who's going to be talking to us about gender disparities in dementia research and ways we can tackle these. Then I'll be giving you a little talk about the Alzheimer's Association and becoming an iStart ambassador. And finally, we'll hear from Aoife Kiley, who'll discuss the UK DRI, the Dementia Research Institute, and developments within it. There'll be plenty of opportunities for asking the speakers questions, to network between others on the call, and to find out about exciting upcoming events and funding opportunities as well. So before we get into the talks, why are we talking about gender disparities in dementia research on International Women's Day? So generally, in science, as probably all of you attending know, there are big disparities in gender. This is a figure we recently shared on the Women in Neuroscience social media, and it got quite a lot of traction. It's from Neuroscience 2018, a paper there, and it showed that females are actually more represented than males in bachelor's and master's levels across different sciences. But as we go through into more senior career stages, this gap increases, and there's actually a lot fewer females than males, especially in the most senior positions. We decided today to zoom in on dementia in particular, not just because it's my research area and I love it, but more so because there are sex and gender disparities that lie within the disease itself and also within the research culture and research studies. So as we can see from the graphic here, dementia doesn't impact everybody equally. 65% of people who live with dementia are women. Women are 2/3 of the unpaid carers of people with dementia. As well as this, dementia is the leading cause of death for women, and it has been since 2011. And as well as all of those things, women overall receive worse healthcare than men in the UK. So there's a lot of work to be done there in terms of treating women with dementia and making sure that care responsibilities are balanced out. But moving on to dementia research, only 37% of grants are awarded to women. This was research done by AR UK, and you'll hear more about this from Catherine later. Out of the 60% of dementia researchers that do happen to be women, I suppose that's a good statistic, only 39% of senior research positions are filled by women. So kind of matching with that graph that we saw earlier, even though there might be more women early on, there are fewer as we go into more senior positions. And there needs to be things done to tackle this. And despite increased prevalence of dementia, women are also underrepresented in clinical trials, and we need to get more women into these and accept more women into these. And in our scientific studies as well, with animal models, traditionally male rodents, for example, are used more than female rodents because we thought there might be more variation within females, even though this now has been proven not true. So there's no reason not to include female animals in your research studies as well. So hopefully it's quite a lot to take in. There's lots of stats there, but everything is pointing to the gender disparities between men and women in dementia research and within the disease itself. I've been sharing these graphics over on the UK DRI Twitter today, along with many other things. Very busy day. So do head over to UK DRI on Twitter to catch up with this if you've missed it. This was a great opportunity for me and Women in Neuroscience UK to highlight women in dementia research that inspire us, but also to discuss these gender disparities in dementia. So do interact with our posts on there. And if you like the graphics, share them with your colleagues as well if you want to print them out and stick them around your office. We're trying to spread the word and awareness of these disparities because some people still don't know about them and things need to be done to change them for sure. Okay, back over to Shloka. Thank you.
Without further ado, let's welcome our speakers for today. Our first speaker is Catherine. Catherine is a part of the research team at Alzheimer's Research UK. AR UK is the UK's leading dementia research charity dedicated to making life-changing breakthroughs in diagnosis, prevention, treatment, and cure. Catherine's role focuses on accessing the impact of AR UK funds and developing the research strategy. She will be speaking to us about gender disparities in dementia research. Over to you, Catherine.
Hey, thank you so much. So I'll just share my screen to get my slides up. Okay, can I ask, are you seeing the right version of my slides? Perfect. Great, so I'll get started. Yep, I'm Catherine. I work for the research team at Alzheimer's Research UK. And today I'm going to talk about some of the work that the research teams carried out looking at gender discrepancies in the career pipelines of dementia researchers. So here's just an outline about what I'm going to talk about. So I'll start with why we did this work, and then what we found, and then finally what this means for Alzheimer's Research UK. So firstly, why did we want to look at gender in dementia research? So this is because when women are not represented in research and in positions of authority, we get knowledge gaps, and these knowledge gaps lead to worse healthcare outcomes for women with dementia. So I'm going to take you through some of these examples. And the first one is, as Lizzie mentioned, it's about research carried out in animal models. So this kind of research is often the basis for our understanding of how diseases work, but in neuroscience research, animal studies have predominantly been carried out in males. And in fact, animal studies in males outnumber female animal studies by 5 to 1. So that's quite a big difference. But with Alzheimer's, it's actually the case that a lot of risk factors, sex can play an important role, so should be considered in research. So while more studies are now including female mice, a large amount of our fundamental knowledge of Alzheimer's disease is based on data from male studies. So this leads to gaps in our understanding of Alzheimer's disease. The next knowledge gap I want to talk about is how sex and gender are related to dementia risk factors. So an example of this is the ApoE risk gene. You might have heard of ApoE4 as a risk factor for Alzheimer's disease. And in fact, it's the strongest known genetic risk factor for Alzheimer's. But what studies have shown is that women who carry the ApoE4 gene variant have a greater risk of developing Alzheimer's than men carrying the same variant. So we still don't fully understand why this gene variant has a greater risk for women. So we need more focused research studies to understand how sex and gender affect Alzheimer's disease risk. And then the final knowledge gap I'll mention is in the diagnosis of dementia. So the early stage of dementia can present differently in women and in men. And the diagnostic tests we have are not always designed to pick up these differences. So, for example, women are more likely to retain their verbal memory and word recall during the early stages of dementia. So they may therefore perform higher in these diagnostic tests, which can lead to a delayed diagnosis. And this is like a really important fact because we know that early diagnosis is very crucial in Alzheimer's disease, and some emerging treatments like lecanemab work best when administered during the earliest stages of disease. So when we look at these points together, these knowledge gaps could lead to worse treatment outcomes for women with dementia. And when we consider that currently the majority of people with dementia in the UK are women, more needs to be done to include women at all stages of dementia research. So that was some background about why we wanted to look at gender in dementia research. Now I'm going to move on to the work that Alzheimer's Research UK carried out, looking at how well women are represented in positions of authority in dementia research. So what we did was we looked at gender discrepancies in the dementia research career progression using 3 different sources of data. So we used conference attendance data to look at the proportion of women who are active in the dementia research field. We looked at research publications to see how women were represented at different career stages, and we used the position of the authors on publications as a readout for career stage. And then we looked at our own funding data to see what proportion of grants were awarded to women and whether this was affected by grant type. I just want to say here that our analysis that we carried out used a computational program to infer gender based on researcher names, but we acknowledge that this will not always reflect the reality of gender identity, and ideally we'd want individuals to be able to self-identify, but unfortunately this wasn't possible with the data we had access to. But going forward, Alzheimer's Research UK now ask all of our applicants to provide their gender identity so that we can have more accurate analysis in the future. So what did we find? Our first finding was that based on dementia conference attendance data, women make up the majority of the dementia research field. So women make up between 50 and 65% of attendees to dementia research conferences. So this is positive, and it shows that women have high representation in the field. So next we wanted to see if this was spread across different career stages. So next thing we did was we looked at publication data. And what the publication data showed us was that, yes, we have a large proportion of women in dementia research, but this representation is not spread evenly across career stages. So the graph here shows the percentage of women publishing at early career researchers, so that's the orange line, and the percentage of women publishing as senior researchers, that's the blue line. So what you can see as women publishing as early career researchers, that's increased, and in 2018 that hit a 50-50 split, and then in 2020 the percentage now more accurately represents the proportion of women who are active in dementia research. But the rate of change for women publishing as senior researchers has been a bit slower, and in 2020 it's still the majority of men publishing as senior researchers. And we can also see that there was a slight dip in 2020, which we think might have been due to disproportionate effect of the COVID-19 pandemic. So then the next metric we looked at was grant funding, and we looked at our own funding data from the past 20 years. And what we found was that there's a very strong association between applicant gender and the type of grant that they apply to. So we looked at 2 of our grant types. We looked at fellowships and major projects. Our fellowship grants are usually applied to by early career researchers who are within a few years of their completing their PhD, whereas our major projects are usually applied to by senior researchers who are maybe principal investigators or lab leaders. And what we found is that for fellowships, 59% of the applicants are women, so the majority of applications come from women. But for our major projects, 65% of applicants are men, so majority of the applications come from men. So this corroborates what we saw with the publication data, that while the field is largely made up of women, this is not represented at the more senior career stages. So as well as the application rate, we also looked at success rate, so who was successful in receiving the funding. And again, we looked at 2 grant types, so we looked at our fellowships and our major projects. And we found that women are slightly more successful in receiving fellowship grants, but when we look at the major projects, men are quite a lot more successful in receiving major project grants. So when we saw this difference, which was significant, we wanted to look at whether there was anything going on in the review process that was leading to this difference in success rates. So the final question that we looked at was whether the success rate of applicants was affected by the gender of the reviewer. So our major project grants are sent out for external review by experts in the field, and these experts give the project a score based on the scientific quality of the applications. And 1 is the best score, 5 is the worst score. So in this graph, you can see the distribution of the scores given based on the gender of the reviewer and the gender of the applicant. And what we found was that men scoring male applicants give out the highest proportion of the best score, whereas women scoring women applicants give out the lowest proportion of the best score. And then overall, what we found was that women applicants are scored worse than men applicants by both men and women reviewers. So these results suggest that reviewers are maybe applying the review criteria differently, and that potentially there's some underlying review bias that's leading to women receiving worse scores. So taken together, our findings kind of paint the picture that women in dementia research field today face additional barriers to career progression that are not faced by men. So what we wanted to do next was look at how we can maybe remove some of these barriers. I just want to say that if you want to find out any more about the findings that I presented today, then we have a paper here that was led by Jorge on the research team. It's an open access paper, so you can read that for free. So now I'll talk about what these findings mean for Alzheimer's Research UK. So because we're a research funder, we want to make sure that we use these findings to improve how we fund research, to make sure that our funding processes are fair and that we're funding the best science irrespective of gender. So we've implemented changes at each stage of our grant funding process. So the first change that we're trialling is narrative CVs. So this is to try and address the overuse of publication number and grant funding as markers of success, as we found that these metrics are biased and favour applicants who are men. So instead, narrative CVs allow applicants to describe their contributions using outputs of their choosing, and this new format aims to support an individual's varied research outputs and contributions to the wider research community. We trialled narrative CVs on one of our early career researcher grants last year, and we got feedback from the applicants, and 87% of respondents thought that narrative CVs gave them a better opportunity to showcase broader skills and experience. So that's really positive, but also it was a bit of an adjustment to our reviewers. So it's going to take some time to perfect the process, and we're going to need to continue to support and guide our panel through these changes. And the next change that we've trialled is double-blind reviews. So this is where both the grant applicant and the reviewer don't know each other's identity. So the reasoning behind this is to try and address underlying bias in the peer review process and to ensure that reviewer scores are solely based on the scientific quality of an application. So we trialled this in our pilot project grants last year, and we just blinded them at the triage stage. So this was quite challenging to manage from an administrative point, as we had to do a fair amount of checking to ensure that applications were appropriately blinded. But there are also a lot of additional things to consider, such as when is something that might identify someone important for the scientific review, and when is it unnecessary. So there are a few judgment calls for this. But we're going to continue to trial this process and see how we can improve it. We've also made changes to the way we monitor grants that we have funded. And we previously used a system called ResearchFish to capture outputs from the research that we funded. But we've moved away from this so that we can focus on research outputs which are more important to us. So our new reporting system is more narrative, and it focuses on aspects like knowledge generation, community building, and career development. And again, this is moving away from a focus on publication number and grant funding. And then finally, we've tried to increase the support we offer not only to our researchers, but also to the wider research community. So we've implemented a new early career researcher programme, which offers mentoring and training opportunities. And the focus is to help researchers who face additional barriers in their career progression. So this has included a mentoring scheme where senior researchers are matched with junior researchers to provide them with guidance and career advice. And we're currently going through feedback from the first iteration of this scheme, and we're going to look at what can be improved for the next round. So taken together, we hope that these changes that we've made will help support women in dementia research and address some of the discrepancies we've seen in the career pipelines of women. But this is the start of a process, and we're going to continue to evaluate and make improvements to the way we review and fund research. So thank you very much, and I'd be happy to take any questions.
Thanks, Catherine. It's amazing to see that the data that validates the experiences of female researchers in our field. And what's even fantastic to see is that how AR UK are making changes based on these findings. We're going to give 5 minutes for the questions in the chat. And while we are waiting, my question to you would be, what are the main barriers for women currently entering their senior position and what we can do in our daily lives, even if it's a small change, to stop this from happening?
So it's a tricky question. I think a lot of the barriers kind of it's a bit of a cycle, because what we've seen is that there are fewer women publishing as senior authors and then fewer women getting these senior grants. But what we've seen is that reviewers tend to look at publication number when they're assessing whether someone should get a grant. So it kind of feeds into it. So I think, we're, as like a funder, that's what we're trying to change and try and stop the cycle in a way. But as individuals, I think it's a tricky one to answer, because we don't want to put more of a burden on women in dementia research, because obviously it's already tricky. But yeah, I suppose if there are women in senior positions, then if you're able to offer mentoring or guidance, then that's obviously an amazing thing to do to help early career researchers. So yeah, sorry, that's not a full answer, but it's a tricky question.
Understandable. There's a question in the chat for you. Thank you, Iris Williams, for sending the question through. It says, we clearly see many women dropping out of academic careers in dementia. I was wondering if there's any data on the careers women tend to move into.
Yeah, so that's a really interesting question, and it's something that we have wanted to look at, because it would be interesting to see if perhaps women were moving out of academia but maybe moving into industry positions or pharmaceutical, or if it was more moving to careers where if there are other career paths that are just working better and less bias. But I'm not aware of any particular data on this, but I'm sure there is some out there.
Thank you. Gonna give it another minute or so. Okay, thank you, Ellen, for sending a question through. She says, I've realized you have mostly spoken about women working in dementia research, but is there any advice for getting dementia studies that only include female participants accepted for funding?
That's an interesting one. So I think it's definitely something that's needed, studies that look at risk factors in women, and specifically that have women participating in this research. So I think just apply, and we've got some open grant calls coming up. It's something that is on the minds of our review panels. So yeah, I think that's probably my advice.
Thank you, and we'll be swiftly moving on to our next speaker for today. Lizzie English is the founder of Women in Neuroscience UK, a PhD student at University of Cambridge and the ambassador for International Society to Advance Alzheimer's Research and Treatment. She'll be talking to us about the experience as an iStart ambassador and giving an intro to becoming an ambassador. Over to you, Lizzie.
Thanks for the introduction again, Shloka. I have too many hats. I'm doing too many things right now, but I hope you enjoy my talk nonetheless. So I will be introducing iStart. Some of you might not know what the acronym iStart means. I will get onto that, so don't worry too much. But yes, as Shloka said, as well as being an iStart ambassador, I founded Women in Neuroscience UK, which you probably know by now, but I'm also a second-year PhD student at the University of Cambridge. So I thought I'd give you a little bit of context first, based on my academic career progression, as to how I've got into Alzheimer's research and why I'm interested in iStart. So I started off enjoying science in secondary school. As you can see here, I'm super excited about it. This was actually in my goth phase, hence the eyeliner in 2014, but it happens to us all. So I didn't actually like science that much in primary school. The topics were often a bit weird, like growing moldy fruit in jars and space. And to be honest, that wasn't that interesting to me. But once I got to secondary school and I started to learn more about the complexity of human biology, I found that really exciting. And you can see me with some DNA out of sweets here as well at sixth form. So I enjoyed science from secondary school to sixth form, especially biology. However, at the same time as this, my nana was also suffering from Alzheimer's disease. I was watching her progressively deteriorate until she passed away when I was in sixth form, and this really did solidify my interest in exploring dementia research specifically, and trying to help people suffering from Alzheimer's disease and other dementias. Whilst I was in sixth form, I applied for work experience at Sheffield Medical School. This was fairly local to me. It was awesome to get my first proper insight into lab experience there, and finding out that this was something that I definitely was interested in. I then decided to go to Durham University for my integrated master's degree in biosciences, and I was choosing neuroscience related modules wherever I could and kept my interest in dementia research all the way through. In the second year of undergrad, I applied for a competitive summer studentship in my department, and this was looking at ALS treatments with retinoids. This was really a fantastic chance to have a go at working in a team for the first time and more independently in the lab as well. I got to learn cell culturing, pipetting, fluorescence microscopy. So if you're an undergrad watching this, I definitely recommend taking a summer studentship somewhere if you can. I then moved on to my master's year, changing cell culture to fly work. My project sounds quite wacky, actually. I was looking at flies as a post-concussion syndrome model. So basically mimicking rugby players with flies. It was quite strange, but got some interesting results. And while I was doing this master's, I was applying to PhDs. As a first generation student, to be honest, I didn't know what PhDs were until a few years into my undergraduate degree. So trying to balance finding out what PhDs were and what projects to apply for whilst I was doing my master's, applying for them, attending interviews, it was quite a tough balance, but I did somehow make it through and end up with my first choice project. So I'm currently at Cambridge. I'm now in the second year of my PhD, and I'm investigating how proteins in the brain change from health to during Alzheimer's disease and between different brain regions as well, using high magnification fluorescence microscopes and also very sensitive assays. So for those who don't know, it's a lot of pipetting clear liquids, and for those who are experts in the field, there's turf imaging, Samoa, all those buzzwords. That's what I work on. My project is within Professor Sir David Klenneman's group, and I'm partly in the chemistry department, partly at the UKDRI in Cambridge, and these are all awesome places for scientific growth, and I would highly recommend. So moving on now. How does this link into iStart? I found out about iStart not that long ago, really. I discovered the Alzheimer's Association first, and this was nearly 2 years ago when I presented a poster at one of their virtual conferences. So this poster was based on my fly rugby work during my master's. I presented an iPoster because it was during pandemic times, but I was still very excited to network with dementia researchers across the globe for the very first time. This was super exciting for me. And from there, I discovered iStart, which is the Alzheimer's Association Society for Researchers. And I've been regularly attending their virtual webinars since. I then saw on Twitter that they were promoting the ambassador program around this time last year, and I applied kind of on a whim, to be honest. I really did not expect to get it with just being first year of my PhD. I'd never been to any in-person conferences, and to be fair, so to be transparent, there were people on Instagram, my site's communication friends, who had said they'd received their acceptance letters to be ambassadors, and I was just like, oh, I haven't got the email, I haven't got it. But then for some reason, I never look through my junk inbox, but I was looking through my junk inbox for something, and for some reason the acceptance letter was in there. So it's a very good job I checked my junk inbox. I nearly missed the deadline to accept the role, but I was one of the 25 iStart ambassadors, and this is my very literal reaction. I was beyond shocked. And this acceptance included an invitation to travel to San Diego to volunteer at the largest dementia conference in the world, the Alzheimer's Association International Conference, AAIC. I'd never been to America before, so this was a super exciting opportunity. And to be honest, you can kind of see in the pictures here, it's really astounding to me how far my confidence has grown in this super short time span, and my knowledge of dementia research as well. And this is partly because I've started my PhD now, partly because I've been running Women in Neuroscience UK for a while, and partly because of iStart as well. And because iStart's been helping to support me during my PhD and develop as a dementia researcher, I really want to share these opportunities with all of you in Women in Neuroscience UK as well, and get you involved. So that's what I'm going to be talking to you about for the rest of the session. So this is a little bit of an overview. I'll be talking about what iStart is, the various conferences associated with it, grant programs, so funding that you might be able to receive, the journals run by the Alzheimer's Association, something called professional interest areas, which we'll get onto in a little bit, and of course the ambassador program that I mentioned. The deadline for that is coming up, so a very important thing to pay attention to. And finally, some information on how all of you should be able to join iStart if you want to. Whether you want to apply to be an ambassador or not, everybody is welcome to join iStart. So firstly, you're probably thinking by now, what is iStart? iStart is a network organised by the Alzheimer's Association. The acronym iStart stands for International Society to Advance Alzheimer's Research and Treatment. And this network includes over 7,500 members now, across more than 70 countries all over the world, bringing together researchers, clinicians and professionals. And these are across all career levels as well, whether you're an undergraduate up to a senior researcher. The overall aim of iStart is to increase the progress of research and treatment of Alzheimer's and other dementia. So what kind of activities do iStart do to try and help this progress? I'd say there are four main areas. There's conferences, grants, journals, and also those professional interest areas that I mentioned. They're known as peers. So the Alzheimer's Association, they like their acronyms. We've got iStart and we've got peers. And peers are essentially groups of iStart members with common interests. I'll get into that in more detail later, and we'll cover all four of those different topics. First, we're going to look at conferences. So AAIC, I mentioned a few times as the largest dementia conference in the world, and this is the Alzheimer's Association International Conference. You can register to attend either in person or online. And this year the conference is held from the 16th to the 20th of July, and it's based in Amsterdam in the Netherlands. If you're interested in attending this in person or online, you can find more information about this on the AAIC website linked at the bottom right there. But as well as AAIC, there are also year-round opportunities to learn and network in focus meetings with the Alzheimer's Association and iStart. So these are the key dates coming up that I've selected. So the conferences are often on either particular research areas. So coming up on the 23rd to 24th, we've got immunity as a focus for the Advancements Conference. But we also have different areas as well. So there's the Mexico City-based satellite symposium. So that's a good example of supporting a regional network in dementia research. But there's also conferences for specific career stages, such as Neuroscience Next. And that's the conference I mentioned earlier that I shared my first academic poster at virtually. And I'm going to share a bit more information on Neuroscience Next with you, because I think this will be relevant to quite a few of you watching. So this conference is specifically tailored to support the next generation of dementia researchers. It's a very varied conference, from showcasing live lab tours to scientific updates from presenters around the world, and these are shared online virtually, so you can join in wherever in the world you're based at. And the topics, as well as talking about Alzheimer's disease and dementia, the topics are also broader, so they span the whole of neuroscience research, not just dementia. And for this year's Neuroscience Next, I'm actually part of the scientific programme committee, and this means I've been helping to organise the programme of sessions that are featured in this year's conference. So I am a bit biased, but the programme is looking great. You can access it online to see the sorts of talks that are going to be involved. And you can register free of charge as well, which is very exciting. You don't have to pay anything to attend this conference. And yeah, I would say it's a conference that's run by students and early career researchers for us as well. So it's kind of different to most other conferences out there. And as well as it mostly being based virtually, there's also a few in-person opportunities in certain regions this year as well. So look out for those. You can find out more about Neuroscience Next with the link at the bottom right, and you can register to attend there as well. So in terms of conferences generally, what are the benefits to you if you join as an iStart member? So I would say the key benefits are that iStart helps you to submit and prepare your work for conferences, for example, with webinars. You also get extended deadlines to submit for any Alzheimer's Association conferences. You get reduced registration fees, and you can also access exclusive networking opportunities and events. For example, at AAIC, you'll be able to access various reception evenings to network. Super exciting. So now you know about conferences, how about funding? So this is going to be a bit more relevant to postdocs, professors and clinicians in the audience. The Alzheimer's Association is the world's largest non-profit funder of Alzheimer's and dementia research. They have over $320 million of funding across 54 countries. So they have a range of different funding awards. Some of them are tailored to promote diversity in research specifically, which is quite exciting. So there are awards limited to only those that are underrepresented in research. And you can find out more about all of these different grants on the alts.org/grants website. And if you have any questions about any of these, the best place to go is the grants email, so grants@alts.org, because to be honest, I'm not the grants expert here, but I'm sure they'll be able to help you out. Great, so we've covered conferences, we've covered funding. Now, what about journals and publishing your research? So the Alzheimer's Association also have a journal family. Alzheimer's and Dementia is the leading peer-reviewed journal, I would say, of the Alzheimer's and dementia field. They also have 2 companion journals, which are specific topic areas. So if your research falls into either of these, it would be a good place to look at. There's diagnosis, assessment and disease monitoring, and also translational research and clinical interventions. So how about journal benefits for iStart members? I'd say that the benefits span both accessing publications, but also publishing your own work as well. So you do get an online subscription to Alzheimer's and Dementia with your membership. You get reduced fees for publishing in it, and you also get reduced fees for publishing in the 2 companion journals as well. So I'd say overall, iStart would be helping you keep up to date with the literature, but also helping you to publish your own work as well. So finally, peers. If anybody remembers what those are, that's professional interest areas. iStart now has 29 of these, and they span various different aspects of dementia research and treatment. You can choose to become a member of any of these peers once you're an iStart member. So depending on your research area and your interests, you might want to join different groups. You can also stand to be elected on the committees of these different groups, and that allows you to kind of join in with leaders in the field and drive the activities of whichever peer you're on the committee of. So I'm currently not on the executive of any committees. As you know, I already do too many things, but I am part of various different peers. So is the sex and gender differences peer, which is really interesting to try and understand the factors that contribute to the increased prevalence of dementia in women. So I'd recommend becoming part of that peer. And also in terms of the advancing careers peers, I'm part of the women's group, the Alliance of Women Alzheimer's Researchers, which is known as AWARE, and also the peer to elevate early career researchers, known as peers. I said they love their acronyms. So I would say both of these peers here, AWARE and peers, offer really supportive environments and allow you to network with people who are similar to you. And I found them to be really great. I would recommend those. And as I mentioned earlier as well, at AAIC, there is a peer day. So this is a whole day where these different groups kind of have different sessions that you can attend and learn more about those specific areas and network with the particular groups. So I'd recommend, if you are going to AAIC, to attend the peer day. So peers, as well as the different webinars that they run, they also collaborate on communicating to members, having the conference sessions like the peer days, as I said, running podcasts, and also publishing papers as well, which you wouldn't immediately think, but they do publish papers on their topics, including authors from around the world, which is quite exciting. There's some examples of their different webinars on the right. So they preview what's happening in the peer over the year. They have Meet the Author webinars where you can meet people who've written pivotal papers and have Q&A sessions with them. And of course, they also cover years in review and basics of certain topics as well. And yeah, I would recommend all of these webinars, and they do record them, so you can watch them on demand if you miss the session times. You will receive weekly newsletters once you sign up for iStart with all of these upcoming events and also on-demand webinars too. So that's the 4 main categories of iStart activities. Now, moving on to what some of you have probably been waiting for. Now you know the context of what iStart is, including conferences, journals, grants, and peer opportunities. It's time to highlight the Ambassador Programme. So this is a year-round networking opportunity, and applications are currently open for the 2023-2024 cohort of iStart Ambassadors. And this really is a great opportunity to volunteer for a dementia organisation and get behind the scenes access to conferences and to connections with other dementia researchers. The Ambassador Programme is open to students, both undergraduate and graduate. So I was kind of shocked to get the place as a first year PhD, but there are also undergraduates on the Ambassador Programme as well. And it's also open to early postdocs. So if you're within 2 years of obtaining your PhD, and you can be based anywhere in the world. So although the Alzheimer's Association is US based, they do have ambassadors from everywhere, and they are very encouraging of this. The applications do close very soon, and I'll be showing you information on this in a few slides. But firstly, what responsibilities would you have as an ambassador? I would say the main thing is attending the monthly ambassador meetings. These are virtual, and you'll get to interact with other ambassadors on those, as well as different Alzheimer's Association staff. So it's a great opportunity to network and to learn as well. The other main responsibility is representing at the AAIC in person. So yeah, as I've explained before, that's a fantastic chance to get to travel, to get to network, and you'll also be invited to potentially other conferences throughout the year as well. And finally, I would say the last 2 bullet points kind of cover advertising and promoting iStart to people in your local networks. So you might want to present Introduction to iStart, which is a presentation like this at your present at your institution, or with online networks like this virtually. And you might want to share things on social media as well to promote upcoming events associated with iStart and various other iStart activities. So I'm just going to cover now what I gained from being an iStart ambassador, because it's nearly over for me, and I'll be passing on to other people. So this hopefully will give you a good overview of what I gained from the programme, and what you might want to think about if you're writing an application as well. So I gained, of course, fully funded accommodation and airfare. Oh, I missed the slide. Oh no, I must have cut a slide out. That's annoying. Yeah, it's not there. Okay. Oh well, that's strange. I'll talk about it anyway. So at AAIC, I received fully funded accommodation and airfare. So first time going to the US, super exciting. I was chosen to speak on a panel to different members of the US dementia research leader community, which I hadn't done before. I'd never spoken at an in-person panel, so that was really exciting. I, of course, got access to AAIC itself, so learned from lots of scientific content and had networking opportunities with researchers that I wouldn't have otherwise. And of course, I made great connections with the ambassadors, the staff and others at the conference, attending, for example, the women's panel evening relating to the peer that I talked about earlier. And how about throughout the year? So I gained from the monthly meetings, as I mentioned. I also honed presentation skills. You might not be able to tell from this presentation, but I'm fairly good at presentations usually. I've given in-person ones. So this was at the Cambridge DRI in-person annual symposium. And I've also given a few virtually as well. But if you're thinking about on your application what to put for where you'll give your presentations, you can suggest your lab group. So I did give one to my lab group. I'm also giving one actually related to neuroscience next coming up. And yeah, to the Cambridge DRI network. So you could give examples of conferences that you might present at, or specific departments that you're related to, or online networks. I utilize social media. So if you know me, I'm on social media too much. So on my Twitter and Instagram, I was talking about iStart quite a lot, and in turn I did benefit from that as well, of course, gaining social media literacy and marketing skills, but also I gained visibility. So my Cambridge department asked to interview me, which was quite exciting, and you can see I featured in a magazine here, and also on the Alzheimer's Association social media, they did a little interview with me for Women in Science Day quite recently. That was quite exciting. So this is the information about applying to be an ambassador. The applications do close extremely soon, the 10th of March. So if you're interested, you'll want to scan the QR code there or follow this link. If you have any specific questions about the ambassador programme or the application process, you can contact Courtney. That's her email there. And finally, whether you're interested in the ambassador programme or not, you can still absolutely join iStart. You don't need to be interested in having those responsibilities if you don't have to. Student membership is free. So if you're a student, I'd say definitely apply to join iStart. And if you're at the other levels mentioned here, so a postdoc or a professional could include lecturer or clinician or whatever career path you are within, those prices are fairly affordable related to all the different benefits you get associated with iStart. So I'd recommend having a look into it. So do have a look at this QR code and at these various websites if you want to find out more.
Yeah, so thanks, Lizzie. That was quite encouraging to see how iStart incorporates people from different backgrounds, and we have a diverse number of opportunities. I was quite envious of the San Diego pictures, you know that. While we are waiting for questions, my question to you would be, and I've been waiting to ask you this for a while now. We all know you do a bunch of things and a lot goes on during your day. How do you maintain a healthy work-life balance?
This is a great question, and to be honest, something I'm still working on and will probably be working on my whole life, because I'm sure lots of you can relate to this. People within our kind of career choice, we're often workaholics and love our work a bit too much and like doing lots of different things. But I would say I do have certain things that I try to keep every week set aside. So for instance, on one evening a week, I always go to a particular Zumba class. I really love dancing and exercise, and it's something that I don't want to give up regardless of what else I've got going on. So I think a good tip would be making sure you have things in your schedule that are non-negotiables, that are healthy for you, and something completely different from your work. Otherwise, work can easily take over everything, and that's not good.
Understandably so. Gonna wait 2 more minutes for more questions in the chat if there are any. Meanwhile, I'm just gonna put the feedback form link in the chat. Make sure you let us know how the event went, what do you think about it so far, any changes you'd want us to make, everything in the feedback form. Ooh. Question from Emily here. I'm about to start a master's in neuroscience at UCL. I was wondering how to find about PhD opportunities.
That's a great question. Thanks for your question, Emily. So I'd say there's a few different ways you can go about it. The most kind of promoted way is looking online and Googling and going on like findaphd.com, things like that, and you'll see positions advertised. There's also positions that will be advertised on websites of departments and on Twitter as well. I'd recommend Science Twitter. I'm on it too much, but it is actually useful for some things. So I'd recommend having a look at that. But the way I found my PhD actually wasn't through any of those options. It was kind of thinking about what the research area I was interested in was, then having a look online at various universities and searching for, say, human dementia research and seeing which supervisors popped up. And then I'd have a look at their research and their recent papers, and I'd get into contact with them directly. And I would say that's my top tip, really. Don't be afraid to email whoever's research you're interested in. They're usually more than happy to help and have a chat with you. So I emailed my supervisor, Dave, and I was like, oh, I found your recent paper interesting. I wondered if we could have a chat. I'm thinking about doing a PhD, and it'd be good to know if there's any opportunities for this in your lab. We had a virtual Zoom call, got on really well, and he helped me with applying for the funding interviews, all of that stuff. So there's a few different ways around it, but that's a good way that I would recommend. Don't be afraid to email people and ask for advice and help. And just get in touch with people.
Perfect. Thank you so much. I did miss a question that was in here before. Thank you, Ira, for sending your question. They ask, as for undergraduates, when is the right time to start research, especially for earlier year students?
Ooh, good question. I'd say there's not necessarily ever a right time, but maybe if you're interested in research, the earlier the better, if you can find opportunities. Obviously, don't let it overwhelm you, but if you have, say, a spare summer, you might want to, again, email supervisors in your department whose research you find interesting and ask if they're willing to take you on for the summer and if you could have a research placement with them. So that's kind of what I did for my second year undergraduate summer research placement. So I didn't do anything in first year, but after second year, that summer, I did a research placement, and that was a 6-week placement, and it was great. So yeah, I would recommend, even if you are undergrad, having a think about it. And there's various different kind of like industry programs as well as academia that you can get involved with as well. So yeah.
Perfect. Thank you so much. We're going to do 2 more questions. Shrijan asks, what is one advice that you would give to someone who is just starting out their PhD?
Oh, wow. That's a great question. I'm not sure how to answer that. I would say take things in your stride. It's going to be a completely new environment. Things might be either super fast or super slow to get going. I was kind of expecting to be thrown in at the deep end, but I arrived, maybe because of the pandemic partly, but things were quite slow and I was like, ooh, not sure what's going on. But yeah, I'd say be kind to yourself during the initial periods. You will settle in. It'll take a bit of time, but you will settle. And I'd say reach out to people within the research group and also within whatever department you're in as well, just to get to know other people, to see what help you can get with learning the various methods, and that'll all help in the settling in process as well.
Perfect. Last question, and we can do the other questions in the break if that's okay with you.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Yeah. Verena asks, do you know how competitive the ambassador program is?
Ooh, unfortunately, I don't. I don't have any statistics. I'm not sure. Even if I did know any, I probably shouldn't share them with you, to be honest. So this year there was 25, maybe 26 ambassadors in total. I'm not sure how many applications there were overall, but that was the first year. So I would say now there's been a bit more promotion of it by talks like this. I'd hope there'll be even more applications this year. But to be honest, yeah, I have no idea how competitive it is. Of course, just put in an application anyway. Don't let it put you off whether it's competitive or not. You never know what's going to happen. I was very shocked to get it. You don't know unless you try. So yeah, good question, but don't worry about it too much. Always worth putting an application in.
Thank you. I think we're gonna get a break for 5 minutes now, get a cuppa, stretch a bit, and then we'll reconvene in 5 minutes. And we can
Great.
just answer the rest of the questions while everyone's waiting.
Thanks
So,
everyone. See you back here soon.
Marcella asks, what course should I graduate into if I'm interested in researching dementia? I'm 15 and I'm thinking about studying abroad.
Oh, wow. Wait, let me find that question because I missed some of it. What course should I graduate into if I'm interested? Ooh, that's a good question. I mean, there's so many different courses, so I don't know if I can specify, to be honest. So 15, so you'll be still in school, not have started a university degree yet. So,
and I
yeah.
reckon what abroad means, because like different countries have
Yeah.
different programs for undergrads.
Different programs, different systems. So yeah, obviously my view is quite limited. I've only studied in the UK, so I don't know about anything really apart from that. My undergrad was a 4-year integrated master's course in biosciences. But there's people, for instance, in my lab, so a neurodegeneration related lab, who've done neuroscience degrees, who've done physics, who've done chemistry, computer science, engineering, biosciences, biomedical sciences. There's a whole range. So I'd say at undergrad, don't worry too much because you're not going to limit yourself by not choosing something super specific. But I would say if you know you're interested in dementia research, there are courses in neuroscience. So I'd say that's probably the most tailored you can get at undergrad. So Shloka, for example, you're doing neuroscience, right?
Yes, I am.
Yeah.
And I am into a 5-year program with an integrated master's and a placement year. So I've done this, it's called a thick sandwich course, and I'm in my 3rd year right now. But I did apply to a bunch of countries before settling on the UK. And the reason I chose UK was because I am the sort of person who can't make decisions quickly, and I need them to be set in stone for me before I change my mind. And that is the advantage it was with UK. Like you can't change your course or modules as often as you can in the other countries, right? So I definitely recommend doing like biological sciences, neurosciences, biochemistry even. It only makes sense for you to do a bio-related degree if you want to do dementia research in the future. And I'm not saying that you have to limit your options by doing this. It just makes it easier for you to get into dementia research, if you get what I'm saying. So yeah.
Yeah, that's super exciting. Good luck with it, Marcella. Let us know how it goes. Yeah. Did we have any other questions?
Yeah, Saliha asked, where do you recommend looking for summer placements other than reaching out to departments?
Good question. So I think I Googled like undergraduate biology or dementia, neuroscience summer placements, saw what came up. And I applied to a few things. I didn't get any of them, but there's the Amgen Scholars Program, which is quite a competitive one where you travel to various places in Europe to do a placement in the summer. From the back, it's been a while since I was undergrad, so this is all very much in the back of my brain. But if anybody else has suggestions, do put them in the chat, because I'm sure there'll be other people on here who will know more than me. But yeah, apart from department,
sorry, no, go on.
No, you go on. I didn't really have anything to say.
No, Royal Society of Biology is a good place to start because they have like a separate tab for summer placements and they link into other societies. BNA, for example, they have a Society of Cell Biology. They all have their summer placements listed there. So Royal Society of Biology is a good place to start. Neuroscience book recommendations. Books are I'm hoping it's books and not textbooks because I haven't used a textbook in a while.
Ooh, neuroscience books.
Not for neuroscience.
Some, but it's been a while since I've had time to read, which is really bad. Another thing that you should carve out time in your schedule for.
Yeah. Not really neuroscience related, but what really built my insight into the whole healthcare system was Complications by Atul Gawande, and I will link it in the chat. It's like changed my perspective about the whole healthcare system and stuff. Obviously, like this is going to hurt by Adam Kay as well. I do have podcast recommendations.
You can add those in the chat for sure.
I do like Andrew Huberman. I don't know if you've heard about it.
Yes, yeah, he's great.
He's good.
In terms of books, there's a few on brain and gender, which obviously I find interesting. So Gina Rippon's written The Gendered Brain. That's quite a good one. There's definitely other books. I just can't think of them right now. We'll have to include some more on our blogs. This is a good place to promote the blogs. We have at least one book review related to neuroscience on our website. If somebody wants to link that in the chat, that would be great. But yeah, loads of great book recommendations going in the chat. Thanks everyone.
Moving on to our next speaker for the day, Aoife. Aoife joined UKDRI in October 2019 following 2 years of research communications officer at Alzheimer's Research UK. Following the completion of her PhD in biochemistry of Alzheimer's disease from University College Cork, Aoife worked for 5 years as a postdoctoral researcher at Queen's Square Brain Bank, specializing in neuroinflammation and isocyclin biology in Parkinsonism. Her role as Science Review Manager at UKDRI, Aoife is the coordinator for internal award programs and leads the annual ECR Connectome Day. She will be talking to us about progress and development in the UKDRI. Take it away, Aoife.
So first of all, thank you to Shaloka and to Lizzie for inviting me to speak today. It's lovely to be here with you all. So as Shaloka mentioned, I'm going to speak to you about the UK Dementia Research Institute and talk to you a little bit about some of the recent breakthroughs and exciting news that has come out of the Institute. So firstly, for anyone who isn't familiar with the UKDRI, I thought the first thing I would do is just take you through a little bit about our history and how we were set up. So you can see this quite simplified timeline of the last couple of years of our history. So the UKDRI was established in 2017, and it is and still is the single largest investment that the UK has made into dementia research. And this is thanks to our founding funders, the Medical Research Council, Alzheimer's Research UK and Alzheimer's Society. And over the first couple of years, our main focus was building a mass of researchers with world-renowned expertise in biomedical research, clinical research, and translational research. So once we reached that critical kind of mass, first stage of it anyway, by 2019, we began kind of moving into the next stage. And one of the first things we did there was to cement our first partnership with industry. And this was with the pharmaceutical company Eisai. And also in 2019, we launched our 7th centre, which is our Care Research and Technology Centre. And in doing this, this established our strategy of not only working towards understanding the diseases that cause dementia and looking towards creating treatments and cures for dementia, but also looking at the experience of people living with dementia today and improving their lives using technology and clinical interventions. So then, as the years went on, one of our priorities became to launch major strategic initiatives. And these have been things like our technology platforms. So at late 2019, we launched our AAV vector core. Then in early 2020, we launched the Multiomics Brain Atlas. This was followed by our iPSC platform launched in Cardiff. And since then, we've launched our biomarker validation biomarker factory. We've launched a proteomics platform in collaboration with Dundee, and we're just in the stages of launching a single cell and spatial transcriptomics platform. But also in recent years, as we've kind of reached our maximum number of research groups, what we're looking to now is encouraging our research to move towards a very translational impact. And that means moving it towards where it will have the best impact for people affected by dementia. So you can see this shift because we have been increasing our number of partnerships with industry. We've been establishing more patents, and we've even begun to launch spin-out companies such as the one I indicate there, our first spin-out, Avido Bio. So the UKDRI as an institute can be a little bit hard to get your head around if you haven't heard of it before. We are one single institute, but we are spread geographically across the UK, across 7 different centres. So you can see here, number 1 is our hub, our central centre, which is our UCL centre, which is led by Karen Duff. Also in London, we have our centre in King's, led by Jurna Ule, our centre in Imperial, led by Paul Matthews, and our Care Research and Tech Centre, which is led by David Sharp and is divided across Imperial, the University of Surrey, and the NHS partner site that we have there. Then over in Wales, we have our Cardiff Centre that's led by Professor Julie Williams. Up in Edinburgh, we have our centre that's led by Giles Hardingham. And then in Cambridge, of course, we have our centre that's currently led by David Rubenstein. So as it is International Women's Day, I first wanted to talk to you about some of the inspirational women that we have at the UKDRI. So starting at the top left, we have Professor Sarah Tabrizi, and she recently was awarded the MRC Millennium Medal, and this has been in recognition for her pioneering work in developing gene silencing therapeutics for Huntington's disease and other neurodegenerative diseases. That might be a familiar face for some of you. Second from the left, that's Sophie Sanford. She's a PhD student from Cambridge, and Sophie founded the Making It Brain initiative, which is a free online careers event for students. And because of this, she was awarded the British Neuroscience Association Award for Public Engagement in Neuroscience. Third from the left, we've got Maitreyi Wairadkar, and she was previously working as a postdoc in our Care Research and Tech Centre, developing social robotics for people living with dementia. And she's recently moved on to a new postdoc position at UC Davis and in collaboration with BrainGate. And she was recently recognised as one of the top Indian achievers educated in the UK in the category of science and innovation. And then over on the far right, we have Soyan Hong. She is a group leader at UCL. And next week, she will be receiving the ARUK David Haig Early Career Investigator of the Year Award. Her work focuses on immune mechanisms of synapse function and disease. And on the next slide, I'll be telling you a little bit about some of her research. So lastly here, I'd just like to highlight our emerging leaders at the UKDRI. So emerging leaders are a category of early career research that we recognise as an institute for having already made a significant impact on dementia research, but also having great potential to become significant leaders in the field. And of our emerging leaders, over 60% are women, which is wonderful. So next, I just wanted to give you a brief snapshot of some of the latest discoveries and new research that's come out of the UKDRI. So firstly, looking at a paper that came out of Soyeon Hong's group that I just mentioned to you. So this is looking at the protein SPP1. And SPP1 has been quite a mysterious protein to date, because research previously has told us that this protein is increased in the spinal fluid of people who have Alzheimer's disease, but we didn't really know what it did. And this paper shows us that SPP1 actually drives the dysfunctional activity of microglia, the immune cells in the brain, causing them to kill off synapses during the processes of Alzheimer's disease. So this could potentially be an exciting new therapeutic target down the line. Veronique Miron at our centre in Edinburgh has also published an exciting Nature paper, and this has been looking at myelin, and she has found that microglia are essential for maintaining the long-term health of myelin, both during aging and in the presence of disease. So the images we're looking at here, on the left, we have healthy brain cells. You can see here they're a cross-section of axons shown using an electron microscope. And you can see that this is in the presence of microglia because all of the axons have a nice thick band of myelin around them. Whereas if we compare this to the image on the right, this is neurons that are in the absence of microglia. So you can see that they don't have as many of those thick bands of myelin around them. So this is a really exciting insight into the workings of myelin and microglia. Thirdly, our group in Cardiff, led by Vincent Dion and by Alicia Taylor, have developed a new algorithm that helps to improve the diagnosis of Huntington's disease and similar neurodegenerative diseases. This algorithm, which is called the repeat detector algorithm, counts and analyzes areas of DNA which contain repeats and genetic interruptions. And they use this to predict the onset of disease and also just to help diagnose and confirm clinical diagnosis of disease. The team have made this algorithm free to use, and it's currently in use for preclinical research. So, as Catherine mentioned in her talk earlier, we are at the stage that there has never been more emphasis on the importance of early and accurate diagnosis. And this is particularly in light of new drugs that have emerged, such as lecanemab, that have really highlighted that any drug that comes out is most likely to be most effective at the very, very earliest stages of the diseases that cause dementia. So in light of this, we at the UKDRI have just launched two major investigations valued at £1.5 million each, looking to uncover new approaches to early diagnosis of disease. So firstly, we have Mark Auriel Bush's research, which is focused on functional biomarkers of disease. and they're looking at neural replay. So neural replay is one of the key processes involved in the consolidation of memory. And Mark's team will investigate the impact of abnormal proteins like amyloid beta on the brain's cells and circuitry. And they'll do this using mouse models and cutting edge techniques that they've designed in their own lab. In this image, I've shown an example of whole brain magnetoencephalography, or MEG, which they'll use alongside machine learning and explore how different forms of neural replay are affected in Alzheimer's disease as it progresses. Secondly, in the second project, we have Karen Duff, who, with her research team, will delve into the pathological cellular mechanisms which underlie the behavioural changes in people who are genetically at risk of developing Alzheimer's disease. Karen's group will, like Mark's, use their discoveries to identify hallmarks of the earliest stages of disease, and they'll do this using both animal models and human participant studies. So, as I mentioned earlier, the UK DRI also prioritises research that will improve the lives of people living with dementia right now. So the concerted efforts of our Care Research and Technology Centre are doing this through the Minder platform. So Minder is a home monitoring system which enables people living with dementia to stay safe and independent in their own homes for longer. And it does this through monitoring things like the regularity of taking medicine, monitoring for falls, detecting changes in mood and sleep patterns, and looking for the types of infections that could result in hospitalization if left untreated. So far, Minder has been rolled out successfully to participant households across Surrey and some of the border regions. And the Care Research and Tech team are hoping to expand this trial quite significantly in the coming years, with a long-term view of a more global launch, but they'd like to prioritise lower income countries in doing this. So next, I'd like to just talk to you about what it's like to be a researcher within the UK DRI. And as you can imagine, this is an institute that is spread across 7 centres. So for us at the HQ team, it's the most important thing to build a kind of sense of community, a sense of feeling supported and feeling like you're part of one institute. So we do this in a number of different ways, and I'll tell you about a few of them now. Firstly, our technologies. So I mentioned at the very start that we've launched things like a proteomics platform and a single cell and spatial transcriptomics platform and a biomarker validation platform. So these are technology platforms that we make available to our researchers either at zero or very minimal cost, and we also help our researchers learn about these techniques through training and a lot of very tailored support. One of the other major things that we do to kind of blur the lines between centres is our theme managers, who are based in the HQ team, coordinate these cross-centre research themes and disease interest groups, which can be things like neuroinflammation, synaptic health, DNA repair, that kind of are common interests that are shared across the different centres. And they bring our researchers together in various symposia and meetings, but also help them coordinate new experimental ideas or to put together grant applications to support their work. We have a data science and informatics team which advise our researchers on data type specific standards and best practice, both for experimental design and analysis of the data that results from it. We have a scientific affairs team, and they put together events and symposia around vital research topics that bring our researchers together and encourage collaboration and sharing of ideas in a very open environment. And they also provide training opportunities, both internally provided training and through collaboration with some of our external partners. And this includes the Cross Europe CureND programme, which some of you might already be involved in. As I mentioned, we like to encourage our researchers to think about translation and taking their ideas kind of from the lab bench into the clinic. And one of the major ways that we do this is through our business innovation and translation team. And they provide our researchers with really tailored advice and guidance of how to go about this. They put our researchers in touch with industry partners and help set up collaborations. We have a specific funding program that funds translational research, and generally they just support the researcher the whole way through to translation and perhaps patents and spin-out companies. Last but not least, I lead our internal funding program, and this is one of the very major ways that we really facilitate collaboration between our researchers at different centres. This can be done through, we fund very large initiatives like the biomarker and early diagnosis initiatives of Mark Bush and Karen Duff, but we also fund cross-centre programmes such as our cross-centre postdocs, which fund postdocs that will move between the different centres and really get expertise and mentoring from both centres. We also provide funding to our early career researchers that will help them if they want to start their own independent area of research, to carve out their own niche should they be going for a fellowship or independent funding of their own. And we also provide small pots of funding to help our researchers to embrace the technology platforms that we provide. And finally, I would just like to let you know that we are always recruiting and we are very keen to welcome new starters. I'd encourage you to take a look at our recruitment pages on our website, ukdri.ac.uk/join us. Thank you very much.
Thank you for a great talk, Aoife. It was fantastic to get the whole span of UKDRI's activities, because obviously, I don't know, we all have very little view of it within our specific institutes, and some people won't have heard of it before at all. So it was good to have a whole comprehensive overview there. And it was nice to highlight some of the women at the institute as well. Thank you, Shloka. You're sorted now. So
yeah, I was just gonna say the same thing. It was intriguing to see all the new discoveries, and especially the microGlia bit where you explained it with wonderful detail. I understood that really well. While we're waiting for more questions in the chat, my question to you would be, given how much artificial intelligence and machine learning based studies are getting recently, and we can completely see that with how useful Minder is, how early on do you recommend for students to get started on it? Because you have to wait quite a bit to get like an actual learning opportunity to realize how much of an influence AI and machine learning has on the whole research bit in general.
Yeah, I think that's a really important question, and I think it really speaks to the way research is moving now, that often a lot of kind of postdoc positions are looking for very well-rounded postdocs that can do, yes, like wet lab work, actual physically being in the lab, obviously miming pipetting, but also kind of things like AI, maybe coding, maybe informatics. So I think, it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to become an expert in AI or machine learning, but it's something to think about if you are interested in it. Then have a look if you're already at a university, maybe have a look at some local training courses, or there's things like Coursera, Future Learn. Some of them have kind of courses that you can kind of try out for little or no cost. But equally, if you're not interested in becoming an expert on AI or informatics or anything of that nature, one of the best things about science is that you can collaborate. If you're a postdoc that is really excellent at wet lab work and that's what you love to do, but a project that you want to do requires something like AI or informatics, find someone to collaborate with and just bring their expertise into the project.
Thank you very much. I think the first question is from Andrea, and they ask, how can you be a member of UKDRI?
Oh, yes, please join us. So I shared our recruitment pages. So we regularly advertise positions at all levels, for technicians, PhD positions, postdoc positions. We're also recruiting a new director of the entire institute. So that just tells you the span of job opportunities that are available. And you can be based at any one of our 7 centres, depending on which job opportunity you go for.
Wonderful. Jing Chun asks, any opportunities to apply for UK Alzheimer's disease funding from an American perspective, I guess. That's what it says.
I would think you probably, it depends on the program. If you're coming from the States and you want to apply for opportunities in the UK, if you're going to carry out the research in the UK, it's generally not an issue as long as you have the right to work in the UK. So funding programs like MRC or the Wellcome Trust, Catherine might want to mention AR UK in your attitude to it.
Sure, yeah. So if you're based in the UK, then Alzheimer's Research UK has got lots of funding schemes for different career stages. So we've got fellowships or major projects, depending where you're at. And if the research is based in America, then you won't be eligible for our main funding schemes. So it's maybe worth checking somewhere like the Alzheimer's Association, which fund pretty internationally. So something like that, maybe.
Perfect, thank you. And I think that answers Andrea's question as well. So you're going to quickly move to Georgie's question. They asked, do you have any recommendations or tips for people interested in science communication and administration and how to get involved with organizations such as UKDRI?
Yeah, that's a really good question, Georgie. And that is something that I was thinking about a lot when I was working as a postdoc. So one of the things that I did, because I was interested in science communications at that stage, was I took every opportunity to write, a blog or whatever I could. And this was mostly stuff that was like, if you're going to a conference and you get a travel grant funding, sometimes the condition of that is that you write a blog or an interview about the conference that you go to, or the funder that was funding my postdoc asked me to write magazine articles, things like that. So that kind of like gave me kind of a small portfolio. So when I went to apply for the science communications job at Alzheimer's Society, I had some examples of my writing to work from or to show them. As for things like getting involved in kind of more the administration side of research, I think one of the really useful things is getting involved in things like event planning. If you're planning a symposium, I'm sure Lizzie can speak to this quite a lot. But if you can say in an interview or, even on a job application that you were involved in planning an event or planning a workshop or whatever from start to finish and you had a clear role in it, that really looks fantastic to go into any sort of role like that.
Thank you so much. Thank you to all our speakers for their time and their wonderful talks. We're going to swiftly move on to the next slide, which is signposting. Here are a few interesting opportunities from AR UK, and we're going to link them in the chat as well. And Alzheimer's Association and the UKDRI will be present at the AR UK conference. The date and the time of the BNA date and the time of the BNA festival would be posted in the chat as well. So if we could go to the
great.
next slide.
I just recommend to everyone to screenshot that slide if you want to keep all that information, just in case you can't see it in the chat. But yeah, these are just some exciting upcoming funding and events opportunities. Great, I'll move on now. So in terms of what's next for Women in Neuroscience UK, we do have events every single month. If this is, well, I shouldn't say every single month because we might go along and decide not to have one month, but for the past 3 months, we've had events every month and we intend to have monthly events. And yes, if this is your first event, I'll just tell you a little bit about the general structure of our events. So normally we'll talk about the latest research on a particular topic or people's experiences related to it, which was a bit more linked to today. So talks on life and advice, as well as on research projects. And there's usually chance to network as well. So do stay tuned to your emails if you sign up for our mailing list, and also to our social media so that you can access sign up forms for our upcoming events. The next event that we're hosting is regarding alternative careers in neuroscience, and this will be on the 12th. I can't speak anymore. Long day. On the 12th of April. So keep that date in your diary for a Women in Neuroscience event. Keep that free if you can. It would be great to see you there. And of course, stay in touch with us across our various different media. So you can head over to our website, which is linked here, and you can also scan the QR code to head straight to the website on your phone as well. And this has various different things going on with it. The interactive options for you is that you can sign up as a Women in Neuroscience UK member if you go to the top right of the website, so you'll be able to log into the website. That gives you a profile on the website and also allows you to comment on blogs so you can interact with us. And we also have some forums on the website as well on various topics, so you can chat and network on there. You can also sign up for our mailing list via the website. I assume most people on this call will be on our mailing list already, but if not, if you go to the website, right at the bottom, there's a little box you can put your email address in and we'll add you to our mailing list. In terms of social media, of course, there's lots of different things going on. We have an Instagram, a Twitter, LinkedIn, even a TikTok, and we have a YouTube channel. So there'll be a recording of this event, for example, going up on our YouTube channel, hopefully in the next few days. And you can interact with us on our various social media using the hashtags here. So this hashtag WinUK Dementia 2023, that was for today's event. So if you have feedback on our event or want to network with people after the event, you can use that hashtag on social media and of course tag us as well. You can also look at UKDRI X WinUK for my posts on the UKDRI Twitter today that were all about women in dementia, and generally Women in Neuro is our main hashtag. And the last thing to mention is our various email addresses. So if you have any questions, any suggestions for upcoming events or other general content, you can contact us on these various emails. The main one is womeninneuroscience.uk@gmail.com. So I run that one and I'll receive all of those. If you're not sure where you want to funnel your email to, I'll then put it onto the correct people. But if you have specific questions, we do have a secretary email, a events email and a blog email as well. Great, so do stay in touch with all of those different options. And of course, fill in our feedback form for this event as well. So we hope you enjoyed the event today. Of course, big thanks to Shloka and the speakers, Catherine and Aoife, for joining us today. We really hope all of you in the audience enjoyed it, and we want to know what you thought about it. So do scan this QR code here or follow the link in the chat as well to fill in the feedback form. Let us know what you thought, what you want to see more of in the future as well. And this will influence our future events so that we can try to cater things towards you and things that you're interested in.